Okay, so now we have the headlight brackets out. Headlights are out. We have all this has been cleared out. We've got the push rods out and all that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take each bucket and line up the new brackets. So I have one of the brackets, and this is the driver's side headlight. This is the rear of the headlight. This is the front. Clearly, this is where the bulb goes. And what we're going to do is, if you take a look, you can see here where the old rod used to mount. You can see the rivet on the other side there. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this. Unfortunately, I'm doing this with one hand, so we're going to take this and mount it in there. If you can see, there is a hole in the bracket to line it up on that rivet. And what we're going to do is we're going to mark it on the metal pieces and drill them out. I don't have the specifications. I believe we have to drill them out to 12 millimeters. I'll double check on that. Anywho, so that's what you're going to do. You're going to do right and left. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that the rounded portion here goes towards the rear of the headlight bracket, whereas the angled part should kind of match up with the angle that's already there, if you can see that. So that's what we're going to do on both of them. Once we drill the holes out, we'll start assembling with all the hardware, and it should be relatively easy past that. So we took the bracket, lined it up the way it's supposed to be. I scratched a little X in there so I can kind of see where the center of the bolt's supposed to be. So what we're going to do now is we're going to drill these out. One thing I forgot to mention last time was you want to pop this little rubber cap off and take this bolt out. This is your bump stop adjuster. We'll do that after we drill it out, but don't forget to do that because without the new bump stop adjusters, it won't work. So what we're going to do is, you know, this is kind of I'm at home today, don't have all my tools, so we're going to try to do this as simply as possible. Try to line it up, go real slow. Usually if you have a smaller bit and you have a chance to drill a pilot out, it works better. So even if you can just get a couple of these in there, just to kind of get them, you get that general idea of what you're going to drill through. Then readdress the bracket, make sure everything is lining up the way you need it to. Yep, we're just about where we need to be. So I'll go ahead and finish drilling through on this one, and we'll go through and do the other side, and we'll check in after that. Okay, so now we've drilled out the holes for the new brackets, for the new push rods. We've taken the bump stops out. You'll notice that they came, you've got your bolts, you've got your little bump stop caps, and then you've got these nuts. So you want to save the nuts because they have to go on the new bolts. The new bolts will go in. You're not going to use a ratchet on them. They're just, you know, they're bent to stop the motor where they need it to stop. So my rule of thumb that I did for the last couple sets of these was I screwed them all the way down to the threading wouldn't let me thread anymore, which is about right there, and I let them up just about one full screw. And you want it to face backwards like this, because as it comes up, it's going to hit the there's an arm that hangs out, and it's going to hit and hold it like this. So it has to be facing back. So like I said, this is full, and that's about 1, so we'll go a little bit farther than that, and then we'll go ahead and put this lock screw back on. You may have to adjust these a little bit here and there, but both of them are bent at about the same height, so it should be pretty even. Just remembering that when tightening down your lock nut here, maybe give yourself a little extra rotation on this side, because as you tighten it, that bolt's going to want to rotate with the nut. So, but we're pretty good on this one. We'll go ahead and put the cap back on this, and we'll continue with the next side, and we'll check back in. Alright, so we've pretty much got everything squared away. I still got to put the brackets in. We'll do that right now. I just wanted to go over this real quick. You have 2 different ones, and they look identical, but they're actually different. If you notice, if I line this one up, we're gonna, remember I told you we're gonna reuse these headlight adjusters, and so we're not gonna reuse this one, but we are gonna reuse the bottom one, and it kind of slides in the way the old one did. We're gonna use a spring and a washer there to kind of just keep them in sync with one another. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a similar thing here, where we're going to use these machine screws, and we're going to run the machine screws through here, and on the back side we're going to do washer, spring, and one of these nylon lock washers. Usually though, you got to be careful which way you put the spring, because if you notice, you got a flat side and then you've got the other side which kind of sticks out, and if you put that on the nut side, you're going to have some problems. So make sure that one goes on this side, that way when the nut goes on here, it sits flush and it won't give you any problems in the future. So like I said, we're going to do this on both of these, and then we'll tie them down, we'll tighten them down to the way that they're meant to be. And like I said, flat side out, because if you go with the other side out, you will have an issue trying to tighten them, and you'll wind up ruining the spring. So just you know, finger tight them a little bit, just so that way you can kind of get them on there and you're not going to damage the screw and all that. You'll tighten up the bottom one accordingly when it comes time to adjust them. But for right now, this is where we're at. The other thing I wanted to talk about was when we did the drilling for the bottom of the bracket here, we talked about the size of the hole. So the size of the hole has to be 8 millimeters. I go a little bit bigger just because, you know, you need a little bit of slack in there. Some people have put washers. I've put washers in the past. The instructions that come with the headlights don't recommend any washers. So it doesn't hurt to do it, but it's not going to kill you if you just don't happen to have any on hand. And like I said, we'll just finger tight these down for right now, get some fine tuning in on them, and then we'll tighten them down. Yeah, so after this, then we're going to go ahead and put the headlights in the brackets, and then we're going to remount these in the vehicle. So when I'm ready to do that, we'll readdress that. Okay, so we finished up with the brackets, the bump stop adjusters, the push rod assemblies, and all that. You can kind of see we've really dwindled down on the parts we have left. The next step is we're going to put the headlights actually into the brackets. Now you'll notice on each headlight you have 2 on either side. The top 2 are actually to hold the bracket, the bezel, onto the headlight itself. The other 2 are to hold it to the actual bracket. If you look at the bracket, you can see where they've already got the hole pre-drilled, and they've got a little slot under it, and that's for these sheet metal screws to go ahead and thread themselves in there. So what we're going to do is, you can either do this in the car or out of the car. I prefer to do it out of the car. Some people might like to do it in the car. It's up to you. So we're going to go ahead and put these in. Now would be a good time to put your bulbs in. They're going to be H4s, and they go in the back here. If you have bulbs, go ahead and throw them in. If you're going to put HIDs or whatever you're going to do, you know, you can go ahead and do that. Definitely, I have my hands dirty, so probably wipe that off afterwards. But yeah, so we're going to do that. The next time you see us, we're going to be finishing it up and putting the panels back in. And we should be able to go ahead and finish this up. All right. 3. Okay, so we've got the headlights here in the brackets, pretty much ready to go. One thing I forgot to mention is these. One of these, this one I believe will adjust your left and right. This one will adjust the up and down. I could have them reversed. You'll trial and error it. So the bump stop, that adjustment that I was talking about. So now you have it here. You can see where it comes to a stop. You want to make sure the harness is kind of out of the way. Like I said, if you're going to run HIDs or anything like that, I really recommend that you get something with a projector housing. But if you're going to do it anyways, there's lots of room in here to go ahead and put the ballast and everything else. Anywho, the whole reason why we're checking in with you now is we've got one of the harder parts of the install here, and that is the install of the push rod, and it simply just clips in and off of there, off and onto there. So if you need to, you can. Now the challenge here becomes that you have to get the nut and the washer back onto here that you took off of here. So I struggled with this quite a few times, and like I said, these have a tendency of being able to come on and off. So I recommend just go ahead and pull these off and carefully remove this rubber grommet here. So that way when you tighten it down, you've got a little bit more space to go ahead and do that. So we're going to go ahead and do this on both sides, and then I'll show you how to put the brackets and everything else on for the sides so we can finish this up. Good. Alright, so we were talking about if you decided to put HIDs in. My little brother has decided to put HIDs in here, so that's what we're going to do. You just pinch those out of the way, put the bulb in. Now these particular ones have a high beam and a low beam. You want to make sure that the little arms on here don't pinch the wires, because if they do, you'll wind up with an electrical short. Unfortunately, with some of these HID setups, you get the bulb is not designed the same way that the manufacturer intended, so you got to kind of muscle it in a little bit. The other thing you have to remember is you probably have to cut a hole here for the wires to come through. Like I said, it's up to you whichever way you want to go, but just to wire them up is real easy. You've got your stock harness here, which is going to go into this piece, and then this goes directly into your ballast, and then from the ballast it goes to your bulbs. And you can't really mix these up. Sometimes on some of the Chinese ballasts, the polarity is backwards, so it doesn't hurt if you try it and it doesn't come on. Just flip this around 180 degrees and it should work. But yeah, this is where we're at. So we're gonna go ahead and tie these wires up, tuck the ballast down in there, and then we're gonna go ahead and put the side panels on and the top panel, and we should be good to go. Okay, so we've moved on to the final stage, and it's putting these covers on. You'll notice that there's two different lengths. There's a short one and a long one. The short ones go on the inside of the headlights, and these go on the outside towards the fenders. You'll also notice when you look at the screws, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe you have 8 of them. And out of those 8, there's going to be 2 that are longer than the rest. These are all pretty standard. The two that are longer than the rest are going to go on the front of the long one, and you have these little plastic spacers that come in the kit, and you're just going to put those on there because they stick out, they stick in a little bit further. I'll show you what I'm talking about. We'll go ahead and grab all this and move over to the car. Alright, so when you look at these, you'll notice that they're real close together and they're about the same angle from up top. And then when you look on the other side, you'll notice that this one sticks out farther than this one. So you're actually going to need the spacer for this one. Like I said, these are the longer ones. So that's where we are on that one. The other thing is you want to reuse the bolts that you originally had for your headlight covers, and you want to just go ahead and install those like you would normally. Adjust them as you would, and then we'll show you the finished product. Okay, so we got the headlight cover back on. You're going to notice that when you position these, you want to position these with the divots up, because that's what's going to fit the tabs that actually hold the headlights. And like I said, you got the longer one and the shorter one. You generally want to tighten the longer one up a little bit just before the shorter one, and the reason being is because you're trying to get that fitment in there. So like I said, we've got the longer one and the shorter one. We've got a magnetic screwdriver, so it picks up any little bit of residue there. Now this car has actually been in an accident on this side, so the fender fitment is not great, but we'll work around it. So we're just going to screw it back into the things on this side. Now like I said, if you haven't had an accident before, there shouldn't be an interference here. Many of the ones that I have done do not have that interference. But like I said, my brother had a little fender bender, and this is kind of the best fitment we could get on it. So after you get one fitted in, you want to check on the other, scoot it up till it looks pretty flush, and then tighten it down. Alright, so both of these look pretty good, and so now we'll go ahead and do the other side. And the other side is an exact replica of that side, but just shorter with a little more access. So we've got the first one that we're just gonna thread in there a little bit. This one as well. And like I said, we're gonna tighten it up. Now you don't want to go too tight because of the way that, I'm not sure if they painted or they powder coated these, but if you tighten it up too much, it'll eat into the paint. And while you may not notice it this time, but the next time that you take these off for whatever reason, you'll notice that they have an issue and that they'll get scratched. So overall, we're still going to try to finish up on this side. We're just finishing that one up, but this side's all done. You can kind of see it looks really nice when it's complete. Fits just about flush, and like I said, you got to remember these are going to be your adjustment screws, these top ones. So if you have to adjust them left and right and whatnot, use these trial and error until you get them done. Other than that, that's about it.